Tapping in.
Are we live?
Hey, y'all, come look at this.
Yes, sir.
Sir, there's a whole lot that we need to talk about this stumble upon right here. Okay. You are telling me that student proves Twitter algorithm biased towards lighter, slimmer, younger faces.
I love this story.
Now, question marks, Xavier, do you have light? Are you, which one of those particular things are you? You're this guy. For those that are not looking, Miles is the bottom left guy.
It's funny because your head is perfectly lined up with it and it looks like you. So that might have backfired just a little bit.
You know what it is, dude? This ring light really does take away a lot of my chocolatey essence, and it makes me look
He's
a
got
lot more
the
light
same
than
ring
I am.
light.
I'm super dark.
He's got the same thing like, because y'all, that was perfect. But I love this story because Twitter set itself up in this one, right? So as the headline reads, a grad student proved that the Twitter algorithm is biased. But how this happened was that people were saying, hey man, this algorithm is messing me up, man. People of color were saying this is biased. And Twitter said, prove it. And the homie said, okay, and got on his computer, started typing some shit. Put some stuff together, right? He used artificially generated faces with different features and proved it, right? Twitter offered $3,500, which is just, that's the time for a person to bet that's a real bet. But for a corporation to bet $3,500 just shows the disrespect that they put into this. Like, yeah, you'll give you $3,500 if you can prove it, right? Let it be known. I wish we had the homie's name. Can you see if it's in that article?
I do. Bogdan Kulynych. Bogdan Kulynych, a graduate student in Switzerland's EFPL University, who demonstrated the bias in the algorithm, which is used to focus image previews on the most interesting part of pictures, as part of a competition, the DEF CON Security Conference in Las Vegas. Kulynych proved the bias by first artificially generating faces with various features and then running them through Twitter's cropping algorithm to see which the software focused on. Since the faces were themselves artificial, it was impossible to generate faces that were almost identical, but at different points of spectrums of skin tone, width, gender, and age.
So that's awkward for Twitter. A little awkward. So we come to find out, not surprising, the algorithm prefers lighter, thinner, younger faces, right? I take offense to that.
About this podcast that you have the lighter, thinner, younger face. Does Twitter prefers Miles?
I don't think I have the younger face. I think my beard puts a couple years on me. Thinner, certainly not the thinner face. I think certainly not with these cheeks. You know what I'm saying?
It's been good to Miles.
It's been real good. I'm a fluffster for sure. I'm a fluffster. So I would say I have the lighter face, maybe, but that's only because I don't get to hang out in Cape Town like you do. You know what I'm saying? I have to be here in Chicago for 8 months of the year when it's cold and 20 degrees outside. Gray. Cloudy, you know what I'm saying? Vitamin D deficient, but I digest. What are we gonna do, man? Twitter's against us. We're too black.
I mean,
too old.
I'm too black. I'm definitely way too black for Twitter. But like, it touches on then, right? Is the algorithm biased, right? Or does the algorithm prove what the preference of the people are? Because the algorithm is determined by what people preferences are. If, for instance, say the opposite of younger, slimmer, lighter faces, it was older, larger, and darker faces, I don't know how many clicks that would get just from the perspective of general interest and the current beauty standards. So the question then is it us who prefer that and the algorithm just so happens to adjust itself to the things that we will click on more? Or is it the algorithm that is then forcing us to click on those things the other way?
I think it can be both, right? I think two things can be true. And while in a lot of cases it might be very chicken before the egg, I think if a company has control over the algorithm and it can be demonstrated that it is biased, then it is certainly that company's responsibility to not promote those beauty standards, especially those that perpetuate the idea that white is better, the idea that, you know, it's interesting to think about the age thing, but yeah, I think we could stand to not have this focus on younger faces and continue to this technology we're immersed in to continue to mess with our idea of what it means to age by eliminating how much we see older people on social media. I'm not with that. And we know about a lot of the different issues that have come up with, especially with the way that we depict women's body image. And as soon as we start putting thinner as the standard, we get into very, very dangerous territory, especially with young girls that are developing a sense of self. So I'm not for any of it. And I don't think the company can say, this y'all like that. If we can prove that the algorithm is doing this, y'all need to correct the algorithm back to get us back to, you know what I'm saying? Sure, people's preferences and personal preferences, there's no way we're going to stop them from doing that type of targeting. But if the general, if in any general way a certain type of person is being, their content is being marginalized, I ain't with that.
I get that. I totally get that, right? And on one end, definitely some people getting marginalized over this particular algorithm spit out. But like when you look at just the basics of what people are into, right? Then it all really does start to make sense. I mean, from the slimmer faces, that's indicative of health and vitality, and that's always going to be something that sells because that's something that us as people we long for, right? And then when we talk about lighter faces, lighter faces is a little bit difficult, especially like what type of lighter faces. Are we talking beige light or are we talking white? If we're talking white faces, then that's just the science of the people that are utilizing this particular system, right? What we're looking at is the majority of people that have access to internet or do interact with Twitter are white folk, right? And so under that premise, I could see why the algorithm would be skewed towards towards those things. But these certain types of filters are still also the same things that we as people tend to have in our daily biases, right? For instance, if we're talking about why it is that men prefer women with big chests and with more bodacious bosoms, and why bodaciousness has been a feature in women fashion for such a long time. I mean, but from the flying buttresses, you know what I mean? Like those are still things that that is indicative of a woman's ability to be able to bear child. So if we're referring back to like say Yuval Noah off of Sapiens, right, who talks about instinctual attractions to things, those would be some of the things that people are attracted to. The vitality. Why is it that makeup makes cheeks pink? Those pink cheeks show a flow of blood, which is associated with youthfulness and therefore is an attractive feature. Why is it that high collarbones or something like that? Why is it that height is something? I mean, if Twitter would take people's personal preference with height preferences, I am sure the number is going to be taller, whatever. And that's because that's indicative of strength, of protection, which is a attraction point for some people as well. So on one end, definitely the algorithm might get that, but then we have to accept that we do all have natural biases when it comes to what our standard of attraction is, and unfortunately, it's not darker, larger, older faces. Unless they just help us.
Sure. But I think there's two types of, from what I understood is from the article, is we're not dealing with Twitter adapts to those preferences by each individual user and provides that type of algorithm, right? If my Twitter was providing me everything in equal measure until I started looking for lighter, thinner, dark, like younger faces, then that's fine, right? Like that's cool. That is my ability to manipulate the album and based on my choice. But if out of the box that's the case, then we're talking about something different, right? There's a difference between my Google now knows that I prefer black products and knows to advertise that because that's what my Google searches are, right? But there's a difference between me getting on Google and just Googling beautiful women and all white people coming up. And I think that that's from what I'm getting from this story is how Twitter is operating. Is it's not even based on your own personal use. The algorithm doesn't wait for that. And I'm assuming that the student who ran this test didn't run it on his own Twitter, on a used Twitter account. I'm imagining he ran it on a blank, fresh account that hadn't had a chance to contribute to the algorithms yet. And if it, like Google, when you Google beautiful women, is kicking back white faces like that, then I think that that's where the issue lies. Because not only is that not our own brain, our own set of preferences, but it perpetuates and shapes those preferences for the young people that interact with that, right? And so a young person who might be more of a blank slate, if when they Google beautiful woman or when they put in hot celebrity into Twitter or when they put in change maker or influencer and it's all these white people, thin people, young people, then we're now shaping their thoughts so that they will prefer these things. And I think that that's where it gets messed up.
And that was part of the issue with magazine representation back in the day, right? Like, and we saw the effects that it had. You had people cronking their hair and straightening their hair, doing all sorts of wild stuff in order to pass off as not black, essentially. Up until we had Jet magazine come into play, we had a whole sorts of black determined magazines. Shout out to Jet magazine actually, and the South Side of Chicago's art bank, which is actually owned by the former owner of Jet magazine. Some super dope stuff, man. If you're in the South Side of Chicago, check that out. Super dope. But their whole purpose too was in order to bring forth the black imagery in its beauty, right? I am black, I am beautiful. Those types of chants were trying to break the mindset of our correlation of beauty with whiteness. What's interesting though is in different cultures, no matter where you go, light-skinned people there's no culture in the world where light-skinned people are treated worse than darker people. I don't care where you are, bro. You can go to China. There are people in China going to swim in the ocean with they're fully clothed, looking like they got. Have you seen those images of people in China with full bodysuits? It's crazy. It's crazy. But all to say, so in China, right, for instance, the darker skin reflects the workers because they'd be out in the rice fields all day, so that they'd have darker skin and therefore would be considered peasants. And so, that would be something that people would try to avert from. But everywhere, darker skin is more. There's a bigger prejudice towards darker skin than there is to lighter skin. Everywhere. What does that say?
It says colonialism is a bitch. That's what it says. And I think.
Can we blame it on colonialism?
I think so.
Why?
Because I don't think you have the same proliferation of the idea that white is better all over the world if this group of white people from the most originally resource rich and easiest to live on land, right? Go check out Guns, Germs, and Steel if you want to know what I'm talking about, right? There's a certain area where the white people from this region were able to have resources and transition more easily from being hunter-gatherers to people that were trying to build a different type of society. So if the world hadn't played out that way and those people hasn't traveled to all of these different places, that's a wild image to throw up while I'm trying to give some That was a wild image. Yo, y'all who are on the Spotify are missing out. My boy is going crazy with the imagery right now. But this could be a wild news story or a dope hip hop album. I'm not sure what I'm looking at, but like, yeah, I don't think that we get the same focus on whiteness if these people who had these resources weren't a part of building these empires. If it wasn't for the Roman Empire, if it wasn't for Greek and Roman philosophy becoming the centerpiece, and we are burning libraries and destroying resources everywhere else. Yeah, I think that we can blame a general tendency to think that white is better on the spread of white colonialism throughout the world. Yeah,
I agree. I can agree to that to a certain extent, but then there's places, for instance, like Alaska, right, where even even historically there have been uh, let's say skin tone prejudices before colonization, and there's a history of that in different places. There's a history of that in Latin America. There's a history of that in Africa, where even lighter people were heralded above um, light skinned people were heralded above darker skinned people even before the rise of colonization. And I think at that point, what we're referring to more so than anything is just a genuine, maybe instinctual prejudice towards darker skin for whatever reason. What is dope and what I'm a proponent of is that chocolate is in, baby. Chocolate skin is in, baby. Chocolate skin is in.
Hey, well, as the light skin bro, I won't push back too hard on that. I've certainly am familiar with, especially in Latin America, the ways that colonialism did play into the exacerbation, if not origination, of colorism. But I think, yeah, like, hey man, if for whatever reason I'm at a point where I look at the world now and I see that we don't big up our beautiful dark skinned people enough. Right. And a lot of times those people that we can point to, the Idris Albas, right, rest in peace to Chadwick Boseman, seem to be the examples, the exceptions and not the rule. And so I think we still have a lot of work to do on learning a lot of prejudice toward darker skinned people for sure, but also older people and not super thin people. So
yeah, and that I'm fully behind, like what you're saying about having the intention of lifting up Black and brown people, which is why what Rihanna is doing is so dope. Which is why I'm such a big proponent of this inclusive community that we're having, and the fight for representation. At its core, is still something that has so much value. Eventually, we're all going to be beige, so we're all going to be miles looking at some point in time. And if you have anything to do it, you too will contribute towards the beigeness of the populace.
I can't wait till we start doing live in-person shows so that I don't have to take this beige slander. It's this damn ring light. I would definitely need to get with a lighter skinned person to contribute a beige baby to the world. And hopefully that makes things simpler. I doubt it, but hopefully when we're all beige, we can all get along a little bit better.